Good evening, America. Welcome to WaterBreak. I hope you enjoyed last week's show that was filmed in Waterloo, live from Waterloo. It was a lot of fun. I can't tell you how encouraging it was to go to the Church at War conference and fellowship with everybody. Those brothers and sisters up there are a good people, and God is really blessing their efforts. I felt at home immediately. It was just wonderful. And I look forward to how God uses Pastor Jacob Ray Ohm, James Coates, Pastor Tim Stevens, Pastor Steve Richards, and all those brothers and more. I can't even mention all the guys there that were involved in the conference, but very encouraging. It had about 650, 700 people at that conference, which is a mega conference in Canada. And God's using them. It was the fellowship was great. I mean, it felt like my people there. So be praying for them. They got a lot of things to sort through and moving forward, how to fight moving forward, how to engage, and how to kind of change Canada, change culture in the future. So be praying for them. And folks, I also want you to know that during Christmas, we have a great offer going on for either those who upgrade their account to gold or premium. I know, bump it up, or new subscribers who join the gold or premium levels. The next 75 club members who join at those levels will get a high quality, I'm pretty excited about this, Kodiak. It's a beefy, one of those tall, beefy metal Kodiak water bottles with the cross politic engraved on it. Really cool. And also moving forward, all our gold and platinum club members will automatically be subscribed to our Fight Laugh Feast magazine. So if you already have that magazine subscription, you're already a gold or platinum club member, just email us to forward your other subscription on to Russell Moore or Joe Biden or Kanye West or Elon Musk, whatever. Also, lastly, all our club members who can now log in to fightlaughfeast.com and enjoy getting to know one another. We actually built a little kind of social media experience for our club members to network with each other and, kind of have the luxury of doing without big tech censorship or all the junk you can get in social media. So log in, kick the tires around, post some family pictures, and let's build a community of those who like to fight, laugh, and feast. Today, that's right, Sunday night, December 4th. Today, we have a couple members from the WaterBreak team talking on the kind of the political ramifications of celebrating Christmas. So grab your best scotch or your best Evan Williams eggnog or Dr. Pepper and enjoy the show. But first, Dime Payments is a Christian-owned processing business. Every business needs a payment processing system. So please go to dimepayments.com and put in /FLF just so they know you came through them. And if you don't put in /FLF, tell them anyways that we sent you and sign up your business. Working with them supports us. They won't cancel you like Stripe canceled President Trump. True story. They won't cancel you like MailChimp canceled Babylon Bee. Also a true story. Check them out. At least have a phone call and tell them that Cross Politics sent you. I think you even get a little slight discount on the percentage when you work with them and mention our name. So, cannonball or belly flop? Advent is here, and as you celebrate Advent with your family, I want you to remember two things. We don't tend to think about Advent in these directions. Maybe the first one, maybe we think a little bit about Advent in this direction, but the second one I think is a little more unique. But first, God is using the foolish things of this world to turn it upside down. God sent his son as a baby, and that baby became the savior of the world. What a silly thing. What a foolish thing. Hannah asked for a son, and the world thinks that was foolish, especially on how they abort children, how they think about kids now these days. Solomon asked for wisdom. And, the world thinks, what a waste of a wish. Abraham asked for a son, and God gave him descendants like the stars in the sky. He gave him more children. What a foolish thing. God chooses to use the foolish things of this world that the world thinks are worthless to change the course of this world forever. To change the course of this world in a way that we would never even think of or imagine. This is the same thing when it comes to celebrations. Often we wonder, do our celebrations accomplish anything? What's the point? Well, the point is that God works through the means he's given us, and he gives us the playbook. He says, have kids. That's part of his playbook. He says to seek first the kingdom and don't worry, and everything else will follow. That's his playbook. And he adds, Ecclesiastes 9:7, go eat your bread with joy. Drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already accepted your works. Let your garments always be white, and let your head lack no oil. That's God's playbook. Go drink. That's a command. That go is a command. And he says to worship him every Sunday. And in running God's playbook, he changes you, your family, your city, and beyond. And all these things look like the foolishness of the world. Foolishness to the world, excuse me. Now, secondly, number 2, dose. Celebration is a form of spiritual warfare. We have talked a lot about over the years, how to fight culture and engage culture and, be strategic and feasible, find ways to engage culture that are strategic and feasible. And then we've added to that analysis through the whole COVID thing, find a post that you can fight from. If you need to kind of do a strategic retreat, whatever you're doing, find a post that you can fight from. And that post would include a city with a solid church, educational institutions and, and economic freedom to build for the next generation. That's all important. But part of the encouragement behind this is as we learn from our show with Yuri Bezmenov. This was really helpful. If you didn't catch that show this week, I believe it was maybe Tuesday of this past week. But Yuri said that you need about 20 years to touch 3 generations. So think about this. If you're 40 years old, which I'm 43. My friends are having kids. Their kids are almost grown up. They're 20, some of them are 20, some of them in college, and their kids are fixing to get married and have babies. That's 3 generations right there. 3 generations in 20 years. And so think about that. What you build now can actually influence and affect 3 generations. And of course, if you get to live longer, you can affect more generations. So build your community structures that will last for generations before you know it. I mean, the impact that you could have in your lifetime, 60 years old, 70 years old, 80 years old, as God gives you a long life, it will impact multiple generations. But one of the things we need to emphasize in all this is that the joy of the Lord is our strength. We need to celebrate like kings and queens, because the king of the world has died for this world. We need to celebrate like victorious kings and queens because our king is the savior of the world. He's conquered us and saved us from our sins. And there's not one square inch that his kingdom will leave untouched. Not one square inch. So our response to all of this should be joy and gladness that bubbles over into celebration. But don't miss what God is doing in your celebration. I think sometimes we look at celebration as just for us and our fun and our pleasure. But God is actually doing something in your celebration. Celebration is one of the acts that sets us apart from the world. Celebrations like the Passover in the Old Testament or like the Lord's Supper in the New Testament are means of God distinguishing his people from the world. Celebration is a declaration that we are God's people and that we are holy and set apart from this world, and that we are here for his kingdom and not for the world's. Celebration means that we're no longer slaves. Think about this. We're sons and daughters of the king. This is the whole point of Sabbath keeping. Who works 7 days a week? Well, slaves do. Slaves work 7 days a week. Slaves have to work every day. Who gets to rest? Who gets to enjoy the benefits of God's world? Well, princes and princesses get to rest. God has made you a free people, and he says, go, work 6 days and rest on the 7th. That means we aren't slaves. That means we're sons and daughters of the king. So celebrate Advent like your sins are forgiven, like the Savior has come in the flesh, like God has intervened in this world and changed this world forever, because he has. And oftentimes we don't look at celebration as something that is setting us apart from the world, but that's what celebration is doing. And it's creating a culture that our kids will grow up and remember forever. It's the Advent season is one of the most treasured seasons in my family, and that's because but it's amazing as you learn to celebrate it over time, how the kids grow up into enjoy that culture, and they learn that the joy of the Lord is their strength through that. So I want to bring in the WaterBreak team. And today I have, Pastor Rhett Burns and comedian John Brandon joining us for this Advent. Welcome, guys, to the show.
Good to be here.
Great to be here.
It's always good to see you, John.
I know it is.
So, Rhett, I'm gonna bring you in here first. It's fun kind of growing as a family. My kids are 12, 10, and 8 years old. So we, Advent and how we celebrate it when they were 3, 4, 5, and 6 is very different than how you celebrate it when they're 8, 10 and 12. And then it's going to be very different when they're 16, 18, and 20 and so forth. But what I've noticed over the years is that this has just been such a great time of building culture. But I think oftentimes families don't realize that when you're doing little things like this, there's actually a political ramification out into the world of what God's doing. So when you celebrate, when you eat at the dinner table every night, there's a political ramification there. When you enjoy your family, there's just all these basic small things that we don't understand that actually impact the world in little ways. But I think God is particularly doing that during Advent in a way, because we're celebrating the birth of Christ. We're celebrating the incarnation of the Lord. How do you think about Christmas season? How do you think about the impact that Christmas season has on your family? And then secondly, what does that mean in how you celebrate, and what does that mean to the world?
Sure. I mean, I think in some ways, Christmas season and maybe a few other times of the year, Easter comes to mind as well, is a time where we kind of turn up the volume on what we ought to be doing the rest of the year. Yeah. And so, we have weekly celebrations built into our calendar with the Lord's Day. We celebrate the Lord's Day, and we want to turn up the volume on that, turn up the intensity just a little bit during the Christmas season. Our whole culture does that. And I think that speaks to the potency, even though we live in a culture that has in many ways forgotten or trying to suppress what the true meaning of Christmas is. The potency of it is it still has that kind of celebratory power in our culture, that everybody still takes the month of December and they're still making their fudge and they're still putting up lights and we're celebrating. But we want to do that in our family all year round. But during this time, it's just another opportunity to do it even more so. And what it has the effect of doing, I think, as you think of the ramifications of what we're doing around the dinner table, the ramifications of the songs that we're singing and the gifts that we're exchanging and the special things that we might do during Advent and during the Christmas season, the ramifications of that is celebration is assuming the center. Yeah. Celebration is, that's true, because it's not being reactionary to the other things that are going on in our culture. It is assuming the center. This is a Christian season. This is a Christian time, and we are celebrating it as such. And what that has the effect of, it has this gravitational pull, I believe, because people are drawn to celebrations and they're drawn to the potency of the gospel. And so I think by our celebrations, we are not just reacting to the things that we see out there in the culture, but we are producing something, and it has that kind of gravitational pull to it.
Yeah, and John, you're in a different stage than me in Rhett's life. You're the elder among us, the wise,
I'm old,
gray-haired man.
Super old, you guys.
You got gray hair. You got grandchildren. How many grandchildren do you have?
9 grandchildren.
Wow. Well, congrats. Rhett, where are your kids at? How old are your kids, Rhett?
I deserve a little more respect than you were about to give me, don't I?
You've changed everything just in this moment with me. Our relationship is forever changed.
He's going to call an audible.
Rhett, where are your kids at? What stage are your kids at, Rhett?
We have them. We have 4 kids. They are 10, 8, 6, and 3. Okay. So we got young ones.
Yeah. So John, how is your Christmas, celebrations kind of morphed over the years, especially now as you kind of get into granddad mode?
Well, one of the things that struck me a couple of years ago is just how few years you actually are celebrating traditions. Now that I am a grandfather, I look back at Christmases that I participated in when I was a kid, and it feels like when you're in it, it feels like, well, this is what Christmas is. But when you look back at it, after you have a few years under your belt, you realize the number of Christmases that you have as a child are few, 5, 6 years, maybe. Yeah. It's not decades that you spend as a wide-eyed child, looking at the tree and all of that. Those things pass really quickly. And then it becomes your responsibility to establish those traditions for the children and the grandchildren. And so I'm looking at it now, and I've got 9 grandkids, and they are at that wide-eyed stage where, the tree and the lights and decorating and eggnog and all of that stuff is very much a part of our Christmas traditions. Mm-hmm. But in a few years, they're not going to be children anymore. And there's going to be a whole new, as you said, generation of kids that are needing to have traditions established for them. And as we have a culture that is less and less inclined to have parents and old people establish authority over them. We've got a prevailing youth culture that's coming up and saying, hey, you know what? We decide what's best for us. We decide if we're boys or girls, and so on. And so the establishment of Christmas traditions by the elders in the family is very counterculture right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It really struck me. I don't know if you guys listened to the Cross Politics show this last week. We included some clips from this Soviet defector. He was a journalist, Soviet defector, Yuri Bezmenov. And he was talking about what he called, I think, like the Soviet playbook, basically. There's more words to it, but this part of the Soviet playbook included thinking in terms of like 20 years, because in 20 years, like I mentioned in my monologue, 20 years you could impact 3 generations. You can at least touch 3 generations. So you can touch your 40-year-old friends, you can touch your 18-year-old friends' kids, and then you can touch their, as when they get married, they have kids, and their kids. So you got these 3 generations you can touch. Now, if you're 60 years old, 70 years old, 80 years old, well, you can touch, probably 4, 5, generations, maybe 6 generations in that kind of time frame here. So got to get my hands on the video there. In that time frame, and that's we think that, man, it's such a long road to change society. But if we can impact 3 generations in 20 years, or touch 3 generations in 20 years, it's amazing how God can work and change things very quickly. And I think that applies to our celebration. If the church is building a celebratory culture because we serve a victorious King, well, that as the world mutilates themselves, as the world kills their generations that they can't touch anymore because they killed them, in some sense, I keep going back to this. In some sense, God really does kind of make it easy for Christians to be faithful, and we complicate it, Rhett.
Yeah. As you're talking there about 20 years, I think of an old Mark Dever quote that I heard years ago where he's talking to young pastors, and he was encouraging them. He said, young pastors can overestimate what they can do in 5 years. And so I think that brings to mind the fact that this is a long game that we do need to play. But he said they underestimate what they can do in 25 years. And I think that goes to what you're talking about.
That's true.
We kind of apply that then to our families, apply that to our celebrations. You can build up a lot of compound interest with what happens during celebrations, what happens over these 3 generations that you're talking about over the course of 20 years, and the cultural fruit that produces can be quite potent.
Yeah, that's really good. So with why has the church not really kind of actually, let me ask the question this way. We had Pastor Jeff Ripple on the show yesterday, and he's in this funny controversy in his town in Taylor, Texas, where he has a Christian. He's been running this nonprofit Christian parade in his town for like the last, I think, 10 years or something like that. So they have this nonprofit organization that basically organizes their Christmas parade every year. Been doing it for like 10 years. Well, it finally got controversial because they won't let the lesbian drag boat in the parade this year. They didn't want any gyrating. It's weird. And so it got controversial. I mean, the Federalists picked it up. A number of news outlets have picked it up. And what's crazy there is he's had a number of churches distance themselves from the Christian parade because they don't want to be caught up in politics, or they don't want to be controversial, or they don't want to have to, be divisive in their community or whatever. And so you have Christian churches, multiple churches, has distanced themselves where they aren't even celebrating a public moment, a public way, celebrating in a public way Christmas in the community, because now it's becoming divisive. And so Christians don't understand, or not getting the impact, the potency of what Advent means to their local community, and they're backing away. And I don't know if I really necessarily have a question there, but it seems to me that there's a potency there that the Christians don't even want to participate anymore. And this is how far the church has gone in their inability to engage with the world. Any thoughts, John or Rhett?
I'll say what's going to happen there is either they're going to be overrun by worldliness in various forms of immoral sexuality. They're either going to be overrun in that way, or they're just going to kind of die out because the faithful are going to see that, and they're not going to.
That's right.
Yeah, they're not going to want to be a part of that kind of church that doesn't have any kind of spine or backbone for what is going on culturally, particularly as it relates to just the ever evolving sexual revolution. And so I think they're playing a loser's game in one of two directions there.
Yeah, it seems like. Go ahead, John.
Well, the idea of celebration in the church has been under assault for quite a while, and you've seen it in like Mother's Day is where it started popping up. You have a celebration in the church of mothers, Mother's Day sermons, and you give out flowers to the mothers, and you say, "Isn't it great that God gives us these wonderful mothers?" And then you have the other women in the church who, for one reason or another, are not mothers, and they are actually offended and stand up and declare that this should not be, because you are ignoring, you are diminishing the importance of us as single women or childless women within the church just by honoring mothers. And so that mindset and that mentality, it makes sense that it's going to eventually spread out to all of the other holidays. And now, if you've got a tradition, whatever that tradition is, that you celebrate at Advent, if you're leaving out somebody who feels like they should be included in that, it's always puzzled me why the people who don't like God want to be included in Christian celebrations. The reason that they do is because it's about power. It's about power, and it's about recognition. And so the church has been kowtowing to that in the name of being tolerant and in the name of being kind. It's like it's unkind to acknowledge some women on Mother's Day for being women over women who are not women. It's unkind and it's unloving. And the church has internalized that. It's a lie, but it's still been internalized, and it's affecting everything else that we celebrate.
That's good, John, on power and all that. Rhett, in the South, 4th of July has always been a big holiday in the South. I grew up in Texas, and they have, and it's such a big holiday where it's like coming to the church. it's almost, and even in some instances, it's like real idolatrous synchronization of celebrating 4th of July. So we kind of get some of these, secular. I think you could argue that 4th of July is not a secular holiday in some sense, but you kind of get these non-church calendar holidays where we celebrate, and then Advent, where maybe we just keep it in our homes and in our houses. And even in Pastor Ripple's case, he's got churches distancing themselves from public celebrations of Christmas. And we're missing the potency, in some sense, we're missing the potency of what God is doing and how the gospel spreads to a nation in the celebration of particularly Advent.
Yeah, so I think what you're getting at there in some ways just goes to the kind of public-private distinction that people want to make. And I think, we've reduced Christianity in so many ways to what is private. And so whereas 4th of July, it's a civic holiday, it makes sense that it's public. People have put religion, people have put Christianity, put faith in this kind of, it belongs in your church and in your home. We see that doctrinally with complementarianism, let's say. It's only for the church and the home, not these gender distinctions out in society. It goes so far where it hurts our evangelism because we don't want to be public with that. And so I think it's just what we're seeing celebration wise then is just another outplaying of that, where we need to remember that our lives are lived out in community, in public, and in Christianity, especially in a place with a Christian heritage like this. I want to make a distinction. I know there are places in the world where the gospel is not taken as deep a root, and public Christianity there, they're working towards it. I don't want to put anything burdens on them in those type of places. But here we need to assume the center, and we need to assume that with our celebrations, because our faith is a public faith, we need to declare it in public, and so not to shrink back from it. And so I think that goes along, how that's played out with our, say, Advent celebrations is just another way that's played out, that same distinction people make, I think, wrongly.
John, do you have any news that we can trust this week?
Oh, how much time do we have?
If not, then we can go on, man.
No, I do. I've got a couple of things.
Rhett gets to join us just a little bit for news that John Brandon can trust.
You guys remember that dude in Waukesha, Wisconsin, who ran over all those people about a year ago in the Christmas parade?
Yeah.
Well, they sentenced that guy.
10 days in community service.
So now they sentenced him to 750 years of free housing, food, and clothing in the local institution.
Wow. And you can, when you're a king like that, you can live longer.
Well, that's what you get. That's what you get for killing all those people.
Wow.
4 squares a day on the public dime. I've got some stuff here about the Donald Trump thing that was kind of sort of thing that blew up. It doesn't have much to do with the Advent, but did you guys heard that Donald Trump had dinner at his house with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes?
Yeah, and Milo. So, don't forget Milo was there.
Well, I didn't forget Milo, but after an intense internet search to find out who Nick Fuentes was, everybody went crazy. And the thing that I took away from that is it's actually really good news that nobody had heard of Nick Fuentes before, right? I mean, that's reassuring that just being abominable racist isn't enough to make you famous.
I had to Google Nick and figure out what all the hubbub was about Nick. And he just seems to me like a undiscipled shock jock who possibly, I'm not even convinced he believes everything that he believes. He doesn't even come off like he's convinced that he believes everything he believes.
I don't know. I'm suspicious. You guys remember when the evangelicals were doing all sorts of gyrations and movements that, if they weren't Baptist, could have been called dancing? When Kanye came out as a Christian, remember when he declared his Christianity, and all the evangelicals were like, "Hooray, Kanye!"
Yep.
I was a little bit wary. Because I was taught that you're supposed to wait an hour before you go swimming after you eat, and you should wait at least a week after somebody declares their Christianity before you put them in a pulpit.
Yep. Ooh.
It turns out that all of my fears and suspicions were erased when 60 seconds after he declared his Christianity, Kanye appeared on the platform with Joel Osteen and confirmed that the Spirit of God was moving through him. And so,
well, to be fair though, on when he was on Joel Osteen's church, he actually preached on sin. Like that was, I don't think Joel Osteen's congregation ever heard anything about confessing sin.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that it was the most doctrinally solid message that was ever preached from that platform. So we got to get. My point is that we've got. I'm a little uncertain about Donald Trump and Kanye West and Milo Yiannopoulos and Nick Fuentes becoming the faces of Christian nationalism. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, that to me just doesn't seem like a wise move because, well, A, we're leaving out Alex Jones. He belongs in there too. If we're gonna, I mean, if this is gonna be, this would be the high council of Christian nationalism, then let's put Alex in there too. And if not, then let's rethink it.
Rhett, did you catch any of the Kanye Alex Jones interview?
I think I saw one 30-second clip, and I think, judging by what I read about it, I think that was enough. Yeah.
I actually caught about the last, I think, 30, 45 minutes of it.
Okay.
And it was, I mean, it was sad for sure. I think Kanye, I have, this is the best spin I can put on it, is that Kanye, when you're a superstar, you know, millionaire, you're in the, you know, you come out of the Kardashian family, Kanye even admitted this. He said in one of his interviews, he said, when you become a star at age 24, you stop maturing, you stop growing. And I think that's what happened to him. And so, you know, he's 40, 45 or whatever in around my age. And then, so you stop maturing, and then you have all the money in the world. You have access to all the girls in the world. You have access to, everyone serves you. You stop maturing, and then you go through that process for 20 years. Substance abuse, he's admitted to his alcoholism, substance abuse, and all that stuff. It really does. I think it really does mess you up in the brain. And the way you deal with it is you patch it up with medication, which is something that he's done over the years, and his trainers have done, and his doctors have done. They gave him medication stuff over the years. So I think he really is. He stopped taking his medication. He stopped drinking, and I think he's coming off this medicated, lascivious state for 20 years. I want to believe. I want to take his confession at face value. At face value, I mean, I don't know what the fruit is looking like. The fruit didn't look good on the interview with Alex Jones, but one interview doesn't mean that your fruit's bad. It just means you're screwed up at least. And so you come out of this lascivious, medicated state, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's suppressants or whatever, and then you become a Christian, and then you stop taking all that. I think your brain has a lot of processing that needs to be done, and it hasn't accurately processed things for 20 years. And so then you add to that, he becomes a Christian, and every Christian and their, dog want to get a hold of Kanye. So at some point, Joel Osteen gets Kanye's ear. At some point, the black Farrakhan. So he's friends with Farrakhan now. He's got his ear. And then now Nick Fuentes and Milo. Milo's a former homosexual Catholic now. Who knows where that's at. Nick Fuentes. And so all these various ideologies and branches or brands or mirages of the Christian faith have gotten his ear. And end times dial. I mean, he's even bringing up some end time stuff in the interview. And so I think you mush that all together in this guy, and I think he's not thinking clearly at minimum. So that's my best stab at but that's still not even a good spin. I mean, I think and then I think you add that to his what's gone on in his life. He really has been deplatformed from banks this last year. The IRS is now going after him. Adidas, all these contracts, his whole business world's falling apart, and he's losing everything. So I think you add all that to the mix, and I'm not surprised that he doesn't trust anybody. And then, he's coming to the response like, okay, I either get angry or I be a shock jock, and then I cover up everything with saying that Jesus loves everybody, which is, that's my take. That's my best take on that whole situation.
Now, I realize everything with Kanye is just kind of, intensified. But this should be a good cautionary tale of when people come to faith or people profess faith, and Lord willing, he has come to genuine faith. They need a church. And he needs, Kanye needs a pastor, and Kanye needs a church, and he hasn't been in one. Now, he said all sorts of people, like you said, people, now in the Christian world, trying to get something from him in the same way that people, throughout his adult life have always been trying to get something from him and to ride his coattails somewhere. And I can imagine, how that would wear on you. But what Kanye needs is what we all need. We need a fellowship of other believers who are following Christ together, because what we're seeing with his trajectory, when there is no discipleship, when there is no leading, it can go off into some pretty crazy ways.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and that I think that was one of the things I was thinking about. Is like, man, this guy just needs some grounding in a good community that he can learn to trust, and a good pastor that can counsel him. Because all you do is you bounce from Joel Osteen to Farrakhan to Nick Fuentes, and no wonder you're going to be driven about by the waves and tossed to and fro. If you're grounded, pick Wyoming, pick your community, stay in a community, find a good church, get grounded first, and especially as you're coming out of this transition of like this medicated, lascivious, infested Hollywood experience for 20 years as a superstar. I couldn't imagine going through that process. How screwed up would I be?
Yeah. Can I apply that to some people who might be watching here now? Kanye West isn't watching us, but there may be people who are watching that need that same admonition to get grounded in a local fellowship and stop bouncing around from one podcast to another and kind of celebrity Christians who they can find, and watch their content. You need to sit under a pastor. You need to sit with fellow believers in the flesh. And so if there's any of those who are watching who, haven't really got grounded in the church, I would highly encourage you for that. Your weird trajectories might not take you in the same way that Kanye West, what's happened to him, but it will take you some weird places. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. And that's why I'm grateful. I love my community here in Moscow. I love my pastor. It really is such a grounding experience where you can learn to trust other people, and they can speak into your life too, because you trust them. And you believe them, you understand them, you trust them, and I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to be Kanye. So I think part of it is I have no problem looking at Kanye and saying, man, this is not looking good, this is bad. He said this, he said Hitler's great, all this stuff. I have no problem pointing those things out, but I also think that that you got to put, whenever I see, C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity, when he was talking about what it meant to be a Christian, and that oftentimes people think, well, this old lady, he gave the metaphor analogy where he says, if you see a grumpy old lady, and she claims to be a Christian, and you see this nice man who doesn't claim to be a Christian, but you can see him at a outward appearance of, oh, wow, this guy's a lot nicer to hang around. I much prefer this guy. He's nicer and he's not a Christian, versus this grumpy old lady who's very difficult to deal with, and she's a Christian, and she genuinely is a Christian, and this man genuinely is not a Christian. He said, one of the things you need to take into account is who is God working with? What was their starting point in life, and where they are at now. There's a very material. We don't. God has taken. Let's say this grumpy old lady was a very bitter, old, very very bitter woman who hated life, everything, and she's truly converted and still kind of working out the sanctification and the vestiges of her past sin, but she's truly converted. And then this guy, he's really nice. He just doesn't want God, doesn't need Jesus and everything. Well, you have to take into account the presence of who that person has been over the years to be able to understand, okay, yeah, God is really working in this old lady, and she's on a great trajectory, fantastic trajectory, and it's the sanctification that's working in her life, and she is sanctifying, and she's dying to her sin. But this guy who's nice, we can't judge off just that present moment and experience with those two people. We have to understand the material that God was working with from the beginning. So there you go.
I just wanted to throw in that to our group, to our tribe of brothers and sisters, that one of the things that I think we should be just aware of is that we are so vehemently opposed to cancel culture, as we should be, that we could potentially build up a callus and get to the point where it's like, okay, nobody gets canceled. Yep. And that's not correct either. Mm-hmm. There's always two kids on each side of the road. And while we can say that there are unholy forces trying to shut down the truth, that's always been the case. But there are also unholy forces that are not speaking. Mm-hmm. And we also have the responsibility to say to those people, whoever they are, even if they identify as one of us, to say, nope, what you're saying is not true.
That's right.
So you need to give me the microphone and sit down. And I'm not saying that you have to leave the group, and I'm not saying that you're going to hell, mm-hmm. but I'm saying that you're allowed to speak because you're not speaking the truth.
That's right. That's right. And Rhett and John, thank you for joining us. And I just want to end here that God, our standards are created from God's standards. I don't look at the world and watch them cancel Kanye, or look at the world and watch them cancel Kyrie Irving. And yeah, maybe they aren't saying some right things or whatever, but God, we judge things on God's terms, God's terminology, God's standards. And so don't be influenced by all this cancel culture stuff at all. I was talking to my nephew last night, and when you get confronted by someone who thinks they know more about you, who thinks they know more about the Bible, who thinks they know more about the debate, whatever debate's before you, we don't need to be fearful that we're losing a debate. We are anchored in God's word, and if we don't have an answer for everything, that's fine. But tell the debater, tell the world, tell the cancel culture that I stand on God's word, and if I don't know everything that I need to know, I need to go read it, dig into it more, and then come back with a better answer. So, well, Rhett, John, thank you for joining us. We'll see you guys hopefully next week. And until then, the joy of the Lord is our strength, and joy to the world says that the Lord has come. Let the earth receive her King. And so as you guys celebrate Advent, keep that in mind. Remember that the celebration that you are doing not only impacts your family, but it spills out into the world. So go fight, laugh, and feast this Advent season. Lord bless.
Armored Republic's mission is to equip free men with the tools of liberty to protect their God-given rights. With that goal in mind, we've created a new product identification framework to make the world of body armor easier to understand for both the new customer and the experienced professional alike. To help you quickly identify the right armor for your needs, we now have 4 categories of armor products, each named after the material used as the strike faces of that line. Our S Series, A Series, P Series, and our C Series. For example, Our S-Series armor features products with a soft strike face, the functional surface of the armor that handles the initial impact from a projectile. All S-Series soft body armor products are made using ballistic fabrics, such as aramids like Kevlar. Soft armor is typically the only type of armor that's flexible. It's also the best choice for concealment under normal clothes. Hard armor plates with higher protection ratings capable of stopping rifle rounds are usually heavier and bulkier. If you're looking for increased protection above and beyond what soft armor offers, we have 3 series of hard armor inserts. A-Series armor is made from our unique blends of metal alloys. Among these are the classic rifle-rated steel plates our company is known for, which have enabled hundreds of thousands of Americans to acquire high-quality armor at an affordable price. While often heavy, metal alloys exhibit many positive properties, including multi-hit capability, edge-to-edge protection, and the least backface deformation, where the impact of a round causes the side closest to the wearer to bulge inwards. At Armor Republic, we are constantly working to innovate the alloy armor industry, developing new strategies to reduce the weight of metal alloy armor while retaining its excellent protective qualities. P-Series armor is constructed from polyethylene, or PE for short. These are lightweight plates consisting of many compressed layers of high-strength polymers capable of stopping bullets with minimal fragmentation risk. Light enough to float, P-Series armor is strong enough to stop all handgun rounds as well as many rifle rounds. However, they tend to be more expensive and can exhibit some of the most severe backface deformation. The strike faces in our C-Series armor are made of ceramic, the hardest midweight material used in body armor construction. While monolithic ceramic armor cannot withstand multiple hits due to its brittle composition, it's the only armor material capable of stopping an armor-piercing .30 caliber round. Due to their rigid construction, all of our hard armor series A, P, and C plates also provide effective slash and stab protection from edged weapons. Not all body armor is equal. Each material has its own characteristics that are important to understand when selecting your life-saving equipment. Our new series names highlight the 4 materials that we use to produce body armor products here in our Phoenix, Arizona facility, so that you can make a more informed decision about which type is best for your unique considerations. Within each series, our armor inserts will be numbered to indicate the relative performance characteristics of each plate inside that category. For example, our A1 plate is an entry-level alloy armor product, while our A2 plate is still alloy but with improved capabilities or features. When you shop online for body armor at armoredrepublic.com, you'll be able to use these new series names to intuitively sort through our many product offerings and locate the armor that best fits your needs.
Now when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the walls of Christendom, he was greatly enraged, and he jeered. What are those fools doing? Can they restore all these ruins themselves? Will they sacrifice? Do they think they can finish in a day? Will they revive the charred and shattered stones out of the heaps of rubbish? And the priests of modern decay laughed, saying, if so much as a fox goes up on their wall, he will break down their city. So we built our walls, for the people had a mind to work. And in the ruins of the West, we laid our foundations. From that day on, half of us worked on construction, and half held the spears, shields, bows, and coats of mail. And those who carried burdens were trained to labor on the work with one hand and hold a weapon to defend it with the other. And all had a sword strapped to their sides and a tool in their hands. In the ruins we live, even while we rebuild them. In the ruins we marry and make love and raise children who raise the walls. In the ruins we craft wine and raise sanctuaries and barns. In the ruins we build and we film and we write and we read and we sing and we laugh and play rugby with pumpkins. In the ruins we raise our hands with swords and shovels and bless the Lord, for the earth is His and all who dwell therein. And each day, by His grace, we are less ruined. Each day our walls and our loves and our songs grow taller. For the city is a living city, and we are living stones.